A farmer walks his mule up a long earthen slope west of the Mississippi. Spring morning, 1850. He has plowed around this hill every year for a decade. He does not know he is standing on the largest earthen pyramid in the Americas. This is the story of the city too visible to see. Three images. The first, an old man stands alone on top of a flat-topped earthen hill in what is now southern Illinois. It is the summer of 1350. Below him, a vast leveled plaza, a field of empty houses. The wind moves through grass that used to be paved ground. The second, 20,000 small white beads cut from Gulf of Mexico shells, arranged in the shape of a bird of prey around a burial in the earth. The beads have been there for 900 years. The third, a man of 42, kneeling at the edge of a trench in a cornfield in July of 1967. His name is Melvin Fowler. He is looking at the first bead. Between the man on the hill and the man at the trench, 611 years pass. In those 600 years, French traders paddled up the Mississippi and camped at the base of the hill. American settlers built farms on the mounds. A group of French settlers planted wheat on the top terrace and buried 3 of their own in the soil. A highway crew dragged their bulldozers across residential districts to lay the interstate. And through all of it, no one saw what was there. The city had 15 to 20,000 people at its height around the year 1100. It was more populous than London in the same century. It was the largest city built in North America before 1800. It had a leveled central plaza of 20 hectares. It had an astronomical observatory of red cedar posts. It had trade routes reaching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes to the Rocky Mountains. It was called something we do not know. The name we use for it, Cahokia, belongs to another people who arrived on that land 2 centuries after the city was already gone. How does a city of 20,000 people disappear from human memory while remaining physically present in the landscape? What does it take to recognize magnitude when the ideology of a whole century has told you there is nothing to see? And who, in the end, carries the thread across the silence? Melvin Fowler was not the first person to walk across this ground. He was the first person to see it. A fisherman kneels on the muddy bank of a creek that runs west toward the great river. The morning is not yet light. His arm is in the water up to the elbow, feeling for the woven basket he set the evening before. The water is warm at this hour, warmer than the air, which still carries the memory of night. The reeds smell of old fish. Mosquitoes hover at his neck. He is perhaps 40 years old. He has come to this bend every summer of his life. He lives in a small village upstream. The houses are pole and thatch. They plant maize in the low ground and beans and squash between the rows. They fish. They hunt deer in the bottomlands. They bury their dead in low earthen mounds a few paces high on the ridge above the village. This is the American bottom, the flat floodplain where 3 great rivers meet, the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Illinois. It is one of the richest stretches of soil in North America. Maize grows here in a way it does not grow anywhere else on this continent. The floods leave black earth each spring. The summers are long and wet. The fisherman has heard from traders passing through that there are villages further south along the great river now, larger than his own. 20 families instead of 10. Some of the mounds down there are getting taller. Nothing yet extraordinary. In the summer of this year, which we will one day call 950 of a calendar he cannot imagine, there is no city on this floodplain. There will be one in 100 years. He does not know that. He has a name for himself and for his people, in a language none of us speaks. When Europeans arrive on this land, 8 centuries later, they will name the ruins after a tribe they meet in the 17th century, the Cahokia of the Illinois Confederacy, who came to this ground long after the city was already gone. He pulls the basket up, 3 catfish. He wades back to the bank and pushes his canoe out into the current. A man of 30 walks in a line of workers up a low earthen ramp. On his head, held by a leather strap across his forehead, is a woven basket of yellow clay. The basket weighs about 25 kilos. He has been walking this ramp since first light. There are 40 men in front of him and 40 behind. When he reaches the top, he tips the basket forward. The clay falls onto the growing platform, and he turns and walks back down to the pit, where more clay is being cut. He does this 14 times a day. Somewhere in the pit, someone is beating a wooden drum to keep the rhythm of the shoulders steady. The sun is high. The sweat runs into his eyes. The right side of his neck has a specific ache he no longer thinks about. The air smells of wet clay and cut sod and grilled maize. What he is building, and what he does not know he is building, is the base of what will become the largest earthen pyramid in the Americas. 14 million baskets of soil will go into it before it is finished. No draft animal will pull the load. No wheel will roll. It will be built by men and women walking in lines, one basket at a time, over generations. This summer, in the year we will one day call 1050, is the summer archaeologists will name the Cahokian Big Bang. In the span of a single generation, the population of this floodplain jumps from around 1,500 people to more than 10,000. Old villages are torn down. New neighborhoods are laid out on cardinal orientations. A central plaza the size of 20 football fields is engineered flat on top of uneven ground. The city arrives fully formed. Nobody knows exactly why. Some archaeologists point to a supernova recorded across the northern sky in 1054, visible in daylight. Others point to a coordinated vision from a small group of founders. All of them agree on the fact of it. Cahokia does not grow gradually. It appears. The man on the ramp does not know this. He knows the basket on his head, the sun on his shoulders, and the drum in the pit. A young man of 25 is caught mid-stride at the edge of the Grand Plaza. He has just released a polished stone disc from his right hand, 7 centimeters across, 400 grams. The disc is rolling across the beaten earth of the plaza. It will travel about 30 meters before it stops. Beside him, another player is already running. In one motion, this second player throws a wooden spear at the ground ahead of the rolling disc, trying to guess where the disc will finally come to rest. If he is right, he wins the round. If he is close, he wins less. If he is wrong, he owes his opponent whatever they wagered. Shell beads, maize, chert points, sometimes a good copper knife. The plaza around them is enormous. 20 hectares of level ground engineered flat over uneven natural topography. It runs south from the base of the Great Mound. It is one of the largest constructed public spaces in the ancient Americas. On its perimeter, thousands of spectators are calling out the odds. Wagers pass from hand to hand. The game is called Chunky. It will be played across the whole eastern half of what is now the United States over the next 6 centuries. French missionaries in the 17th century, watching men play it on the lower Mississippi, will describe men who bet their houses and their fields on a single throw. The rules will not have changed. Cahokia, in this summer, around the year 1100, has 15 to 20,000 inhabitants. It is the largest city built north of Mexico before 1800. It is more populous than London in the same century. It has residential quarters laid out in cardinal quadrants. It has specialized artisan districts. It has an astronomical observatory 800 meters to the west. At the center of everything is this leveled plaza and the young man following his rolling disc. The dust of the plaza is gray and fine and clings to the sweat on his calves. Behind him, the tiered silhouette of the great mound cuts the afternoon sky. Drums are marking the count of the game. The disc slows, comes to rest. The crowd measures the distance. Someone calls out. Beads change hands. A woman of 40 sits cross-legged on a mat in a workshop south of the Grand Plaza. In front of her, on a wooden slab, is the spiral body of a marine shell. It is a lightning whelk harvested from the Gulf of Mexico coast 1,500 kilometers south. It has traveled up the Mississippi in trader canoes, hand to hand, community to community. She holds a chert hammerstone in her right hand. With careful angled strikes, she is breaking the outer whorl of the shell to expose the central column, the columella. The columella is the densest part. It is what she has been paid to work. The workshop smells of salt and mineral. The shell dust is fine and white and clings to her wet fingers. Beside her, in a ceramic pot painted with a red spiral, are perhaps 200 cylindrical shell beads she has already finished. Each bead is drilled through the center. Each is polished on a sandstone slab. Each will be strung with thousands of others. The lightning whelk is not from here. Neither is the copper in the neighboring stall, which comes from the Great Lakes, 800 kilometers north. Neither is the obsidian that passed through last spring from the Rocky Mountains, 2,000 kilometers west. Cahokia, in the year 1100, is the hub of a continental trade network. Shell from the Gulf, copper from Lake Superior, obsidian from what is now Wyoming, ceramic styles from every regional center of the Mississippian world. The city does not conquer. It has no army in any recognizable sense. There is no evidence of tribute-paying states. What Cahokia has is prestige. Its beads, its pottery, its imagery, its game of chunky, all of these radiate outward from this floodplain along the great river systems. The imagery is a shared vocabulary that archaeologists will one day name the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex. Falcon human figures, sun crosses, feathered serpents, open hands with eyes at the center. The whole eastern half of the continent will learn to recognize these signs. The woman does not know she is at the center of a continent. She knows she has 200 beads and needs 2,000 more by the end of the moon. She turns the shell, strikes it again. A man stands in a wide circle of tall wooden posts before sunrise. It is the autumn equinox, around the 20th of September in the year we call 1100. The circle around him is 48 posts of red cedar, each about 6 meters tall, painted at the base with red ochre. The ring is 125 meters across. He is at its exact center. The morning is very cold. His breath makes small clouds in front of his face. He can smell the cedar, resinous, faintly sweet, distinct from the oak and pine of the surrounding forest. Behind him, 4 assistants hold bundles of tobacco in silence. He is waiting for the first light. 850 meters to the east, invisible in the pre-dawn darkness, is the front face of the Great Mound, the largest earthen structure in the Americas. He knows exactly where it is. He knows exactly which 2 posts of this circle will frame the sun when it rises. When the sun clears the horizon, it will appear from behind the top of the Great Mound, not to the side of it, not above it, from it, as if the sun were being carried up out of the mound itself along a line of sight engineered by the astronomers of this city generation after generation. The line will be verified, the moon will be counted, the calendar for the next 6 months of planting and harvest will be set. Archaeologists digging here in the 20th century will find the post holes of 5 successive circulars built between about 900 and 1150. Woodhenge 1 had 24 posts. Woodhenge 2 had 36. This one has 48. The next will have 60. The final one will be started but never finished. Each circle is more precise than the last. The observer at the center of Woodhenge 3 is not calculating. He is watching. The first sliver of orange appears at the horizon in the exact gap between the posts he has been waiting on. The line holds. He nods once. The assistants breathe out. The year turns. Pause for a moment. We are at the highest point. By the year 1125, Cahokia has almost 20,000 people, an observatory of red cedar, a leveled central plaza the size of a small European town, and trade routes reaching from the Gulf to the Rockies. Its game is being played 600 kilometers away in every direction. Its imagery is being copied on the coast of what is now Georgia and Alabama. No city north of Mexico will match this scale again until Philadelphia in the 1700s. And now, though no one at the top of the Great Mound sees it yet, the curve begins to bend. The end of Cahokia will not be a catastrophe. There is no invasion. There is no plague we can identify. There is no volcano. What is coming is slower and stranger. It will take almost 200 years. It will empty the city one household at a time. The first sign is a wall. Somewhere at the outer edge of the ceremonial center, summer of 1175, a man stands at the bottom of a trench, holding an oak stake against his shoulder while 3 others push dirt around its base. The stake is one of 20,000. The Palisade is being rebuilt for the 3rd time in a generation. He does not know he is building a symptom. A man of 35 ties his canoe to a low willow on the bank of the Black Warrior River. It is late afternoon, and he has been paddling and portaging for 35 days. Ahead of him is the settlement he has come to reach, Moundville, in what is now central Alabama, 850 kilometers south of Cahokia by river. His shoulders have a specific pain now. It runs from the base of the neck down along the top of the arm and stops just above the elbow. He has learned to think around it. In the belly of the canoe are 12 pots of Ramey incised ceramic, the distinctive black-slipped ware of Cahokia, decorated with spirals cut into the shoulder while the clay was still soft. There are also 6 chert axes from Mill Creek in southern Illinois, and a bundle of shell beads wrapped in maize husks. He has come to trade these for Moundville's own pottery, for river shells from the Gulf Coast, and for information. A young Moundville woman helps him pull the canoe up onto the bank. She notices the Ramey spirals immediately. Moundville in this year, around 1150, is one of the 6 or 7 regional centers of the Mississippian World. It has its own Great Plaza, its own tiered mounds, its own chiefly leadership. It is smaller than Cahokia, but the same shape. It uses the same iconography. It plays the same game. North, Aztalan, near what is now Milwaukee. Southeast, Etowah in northern Georgia. Southwest, Spiro in eastern Oklahoma. West along the Ohio. Angel Mounds in southern Indiana, all connected by rivers, all in exchange with each other, and all, in this generation, still oriented in some way toward the Great Mound 800 kilometers north. Cahokia does not rule any of them. There is no evidence of tribute, no evidence of garrison, no evidence of forced labor imported from these centers. What Cahokia has is prestige. It is the origin of a cosmology, the origin of a ceramic style, the origin of the game. The trader unloads his pots. Two Moundville men come down to look. One of them nods. The exchange begins. The man in the trench is 40 years old. He has been in this trench since first light. He is standing about 1.5 meters below the surface of the ground, and above him, 3 others are pushing red earth around the base of an oak stake that he is holding vertical against his right shoulder. The stake is about 5 meters tall. It weighs perhaps 150 kilos. It is one of 20,000. The clay of the trench is smearing his moccasins and his knees. The smell of the fresh-cut oak is heavy. His stake is number 4 in the segment. The segment will hold 30 stakes. There are 120 segments. The Palisade forms a full circuit of 3.2 kilometers around the ceremonial center of Cahokia, and it is being built for the 3rd time in 70 years, 3 times. The first Palisade went up sometime after the Big Bang. It was rebuilt around 1150. It is being rebuilt now in the summer of 1175. Each rebuild adds bastions, small defensive towers spaced every 20 meters, from which a defender can shoot arrows down the length of the wall. Bastions imply a threat. Someone thinks arrows will come. Archaeologists have been arguing about the threat for 80 years and still do not know its shape. Some think it was external, regional rivals, or populations moving in from the north. Some think it was internal, factional conflict between neighborhoods. Some think it was both. What is not in dispute is the effort. 20,000 oak stakes for each rebuild. The forests within a day's walk of the city are almost gone. The wall cuts through parts of Cahokia that were once open neighborhoods. Some households are inside the Palisade now. Others were left outside. The wall did not just defend the ceremonial center. It divided the city that had lived without walls for 100 years. The man in the trench cannot see this from where he stands. He can see 3 others pushing dirt, the length of oak against his shoulder, and a small patch of sky through the top of the trench. He straightens his back. Stake 5 is being lowered in. A woman of 50 kneels between rows of maize on the western edge of the city. It is late October, around the year 1250. In her elbow, a woven basket. In her hands, the ears she has just twisted off the stalks. The ears are lighter than she remembers them being when she was young. She holds one up to the low afternoon light. There are gaps in the top 3 rows of kernels. A whole quarter of the ear did not fill. She sets it in the basket and reaches for the next. The air is dry. It is drier than October should be. 20 years ago, the leaves would have been damp on her fingers by this hour. Now they crack. To the east, the landscape has changed. The forests within a day's walk of the city, the same forests she played in as a girl, are mostly cut. Scrub has come back. Erosion has widened the creeks. The rains fall on bare slopes and pull the topsoil down into the river. Something else has changed, though she has no word for it. The growing season is shorter. The first frost comes earlier each fall. The last frost comes later each spring. This will not be reversed in her lifetime. Archaeologists will one day call this the beginning of the Little Ice Age. It sets in over the northern hemisphere around 1250 and lasts for 600 years. In the American bottom, it means smaller harvests. In Greenland, it means the Norse settlements will freeze out and be abandoned within a century. Cahokia has been in slow decline for 2 generations already. The Palisade is up for the 4th time. Neighborhoods on the outer ring are thinning. Ramey incised pottery is no longer being copied. Downriver, the traders come less often. The workshops are quieter. This is what archaeologists call the Moorhead phase. It is not a fall, it is a fade. The woman shakes another ear off the stalk. 2 rows of kernels are hollow. She puts it in the basket anyway. A man of 45 ties a basket of ceramic cups to the middle bench of a canoe pulled up on the bank of Cahokia Creek. It is a morning in April, around the year 1300. His wife is behind him, folding a woven blanket around a set of church scrapers. Their 3 children are watching from the doorway of the house they are leaving today. The house was built by his father. He was born in it. His youngest was born in it. It will stay standing after they go. He is not the first to leave the block. 5 of the 10 households on this street left last autumn. 2 the winter before. The bark on the doorposts of the empty houses has started to loosen. The neighborhood is quiet, in a way he still cannot fully accept. He remembers it loud. Dogs, children between the houses, traders calling out from the corner. Now there is only the creek, the smell of cold ash from fires that went out weeks ago. They are going south to Kincaid Mounds on the Ohio River, where his wife's cousin has land and a place already prepared for them. They will not come back. Cahokia is not being invaded. It is not being burned. Nobody is chasing them out. What is happening is slower than that. The city has become a difficult place to live in. Smaller harvests, more crowding around the remaining rich fields, fewer traders coming through, no clear political center anymore. Households have begun to make individual decisions. His was made in February. Archaeologists will one day call this the Sand Prairie Phase. It runs roughly from 1275 to 1400. Population drops steadily. Neighborhoods empty one street at a time. The people go to Kincaid, to Angel Mounds, to smaller settlements along the Mississippi. Some go to Moundville, 600 kilometers south. None of them are going to a wilderness. All of them are going to somewhere else that already knows how to be Mississippian. He tightens the last cord and looks up. His middle daughter is already carrying the last basket down. The old man stands on the 3rd terrace of the Great Mound. It is late afternoon in July, around the year 1350. He is perhaps 65 years old. He is alone. Below him to the west, the Grand Plaza is empty. 20 hectares of leveled ground. 250 years of ceremonial use. Nothing on it now. The stakes for the last chunky game were pulled out of the ground 3 summers ago and used for firewood. Northwest of the plaza, the last Woodhenge is falling. 2 of the outer posts came down in the winter storm the year before. Nobody replaced them. The observation stopped in his grandfather's time. South of him, along the ridge where his own house used to be, the Palisade has been fully dismantled. The oak was too valuable to leave in the ground. Households leaving the city took the stakes with them or traded them to households still leaving. He has a small basket at his feet, 3 pots of Ramey incised heirlooms from his grandmother, kept even when the workshop that made them closed 40 years ago. A knife of Mill Creek chert. A folded bundle of maize seeds selected for this year's planting, not here, wherever he is going. He has not decided yet. The wind moves across the top of the Great Mound. There is no other sound. This mound is the highest point for many kilometers in any direction, and from up here he can see the whole floodplain. He can see that the floodplain has almost no one on it. Cahokia is not being conquered. It is not burning. What is happening is quieter than that. Households have been leaving for 80 years, and today he is one of the last still here, and tomorrow he will not be here either. The city that had 20,000 people has, this summer, perhaps 300. He shoulders the basket. He walks to the top of the south ramp and starts down. He does not look back. The camera stays on the ridge. In 18 generations, a group of French farmers will plant wheat on this exact terrace. In 13 generations, an American farmer will plow around the base of this mound the way you plow around a natural hill. In 2 generations, a bulldozer clearing the corridor for an interstate highway will scrape the top off 2 residential districts a kilometer to the east. In 1 generation, a man of 42 named Melvin Fowler will kneel at the edge of a trench 400 meters south of where the old man is now walking. On that afternoon in 1350, the old man reaches the base of the ramp and walks toward the creek. The city closes behind him. A woman of 30 sits in a workshop at Moundville on the Black Warrior River in what is now Alabama. It is a spring morning in the year 1450. Between her knees is a slab of black slate the size of a large book. In her right hand, a chert chisel ground to a fine point. She is engraving a birdman. The figure, a man with the head and wings of a falcon holding a mace, is exactly the same figure that was engraved in shell and copper at Cahokia 350 years ago. The proportions are the same. The pose is the same. The iconography has crossed nearly 4 centuries and 800 kilometers without losing its shape. The slate resists the chisel with a specific density, harder than clay, softer than granite. She has to press just so. If she presses too hard, the point skips. If she presses too soft, the line does not carry. She has been engraving birdmen since she was 15. Around her, other slates are stacked in various stages. Sun crosses set inside circles, feathered serpents with double bodies, open hands with an eye at the center. These are the shared signs of the southeastern ceremonial complex, a vocabulary that now spans from Georgia to Oklahoma and from Wisconsin to Florida. But something has shifted since Cahokia emptied. Moundville is at its peak in this generation. Etowah in Georgia is thriving. Spiro in Oklahoma is receiving offerings from 1,000 kilometers in every direction. The iconography still moves. The chunky game is still played. The ceramic styles are still copied, but nothing radiates from a single center anymore. There is no place upstream that all the other places look to. There is no capital. Nobody at Moundville in 1450 claims Cahokia as origin. Nobody in Etowah does either. The great mound at the American bottom is 100 years empty by now, covered in grass. Traders on the Mississippi pass it without stopping. The woman finishes the wing of the falcon. She sets down the chisel and picks up a bone burnisher to smooth the line. She has never heard the name Cahokia. Nobody has heard it yet. Nobody will hear it for another 2 centuries. A lay brother in a brown habit kneels on top of a large earthen mound, planting rows of wheat. It is a morning in May 1811. 8 other brothers are working alongside him. Below them, on the second terrace, a young orchard of apple trees. At the base of the mound, a cluster of cabins where 80 French Trappists have lived for 19 months. The soil on top of the mound is unusual. As the lay brother pushes the seed drill down into it, he keeps striking small, hard fragments. Some of them are shell. Some of them are pieces of dark, incised pottery with spiraling patterns that he thinks are ornamental river stones. He does not know what he is holding. Nobody at the priory knows. The wind on top of the mound never stops. It complicates the sowing. The seeds blow off before he can cover them. He has to work with his shoulder against the wind, kneeling low. The Trappists arrived from France by way of Kentucky in the autumn of 1809. A French merchant of Cahokia named Nicolas Jarrot gave them land at the base of the Great Mound and around several smaller ones. They came to farm, to keep silence, and to build a house that would survive the frontier. It has not been easy. Malaria took 3 brothers in the first fall. The winter was hard. In December of this year, 7 months from now, the new Madrid earthquake will crack the walls of their main cabin. Later this year, a young American named Henry Marie Brackenridge will visit the priory and climb this same terrace. He will look out across the American bottom and write in his notebook that the Great Mound and the surrounding hills are the work of a lost race of ancient inhabitants. He will publish the description in 1814 in a book called Views of Louisiana, and in that book he will give the mound a name. He will call it Monk's Mound, after the men now planting wheat on its terrace. The name will hold for the next 200 years. Prior Dom Urban Guillet will lead the Trappists off the mound in 1813, defeated by the fever. The name will stay. Thomas Amos Hill digs a well on top of a large earthen mound in the American bottom. It is the summer of 1846. He has bought the property the year before and intends to build his house on the 3rd terrace. The well is where the house will need water. At about 2 meters down, his auger strikes something hard. He pulls up bone fragments, human bone. He also pulls up shards of dark pottery with spiraling incisions, the same pottery the Trappists could not identify 35 years before. Hill notes it, sets the fragments aside, and keeps digging. He is here to build a house. He is not here to be a scholar. 19 years later, in 1864, he will sell the land to Thomas Ramey. The house will remain on the mound for 8 decades. Cyrus Thomas is 68 years old. He sits at a wooden desk in the offices of the Bureau of American Ethnology at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. It is late January, 1893. The desk lamp is on. He is writing the conclusion of a report that has taken him 11 years to complete. Thomas has directed field crews across 23 states. They have excavated more than 2,000 structures. They have measured, sketched, cataloged. Thomas began the project in 1882, convinced of what most white Americans then believed, that the mounds had been built by a lost race, Vikings, Israelites, Atlanteans, some vanished people distinct from the Native Americans of the continent. The lost race theory had a purpose. It said the land had once belonged to someone else, someone erased. It made removal easier to justify. 11 years of evidence changed him. He writes now that the mounds were built by the direct ancestors of the native peoples living in the region when Europeans arrived. There is no lost race. There is no vanished builder. The people were here. They are still here. The report will be published in 1894. It will not end the lost race belief in popular culture, but it will end it in science. The state of Illinois creates Cahokia mounds. State Park in 1925. Warren King Moorhead has excavated systematically between 21 and 23. His monograph will appear in 29. The park exists on paper. In practice, it is grassy earthworks used for cattle grazing. Nobody yet describes the site as a city. East St. Louis expands westward across the American bottom. Suburbs are laid out over what were once residential districts. Warren Whitry, an archaeologist at the Illinois State Museum, is working late in a fluorescent-lit office in the summer of 1961. On his desk, aerial photographs of the corridor of the planned Interstate 255. The road will cut through the outer districts. The Federal Highway Act requires salvage archaeology before construction. Whitry has weeks, not years. On the photographs, he notices post holes in a residential area. They are not aligned to any building he recognizes. He traces them with a parallel rule. They form a circle, 125 meters across. He hypothesizes an astronomical observatory. He names it after Stonehenge and the wooden Woodhenge at Amesbury, the American Woodhenge. He will publish in 1969 in a volume edited by a Wisconsin archaeologist named Melvin Fowler. The same method Whitry uses that summer night, mapping post holes, testing for geometric regularity, hypothesizing function, will 6 years later be applied by Fowler to a small ridgetop mound south of the Great Mound. Fowler will call it Mound 72. Melvin Fowler is 42 years old. He is kneeling at the edge of a trench in a cornfield in southern Illinois. Mid-July, 1967. Gray work shirt, khaki field pants, thin wire frame glasses, a field notebook open on his right thigh, a pencil behind his ear. The trench is on the north flank of a small mound, 850 meters south of the Great Mound. This mound is not large, 44 meters by 22, oriented northwest to southeast, not aligned to the cardinal directions like almost everything else at Cahokia. Fowler chose it for exactly that reason. The heat is the specific heat of July. In the American bottom, 35 degrees, still air. The clay in the trench has hardened in the sun. A graduate student from Wisconsin-Milwaukee is inside the trench, 75 centimeters down, working with a small brush. The student stops. He calls Fowler over. Fowler steps down into the trench and kneels. What has been exposed is a single fragment, a segment of human humerus, the right one, brown-reddish against the gray clay. Beside it, in a deliberate pattern, not scattered, not fallen, are small white beads, cylindrical, cut from the columella of Gulf of Mexico shells. The same beads a woman was cutting in a workshop south of the Grand Plaza 900 years ago. Fowler does not speak for a long moment. Then he asks the student to widen the trench. The excavation of Mound 72 will take 4 seasons. It will reveal the burial we now call Feature 101, 2 central individuals surrounded by approximately 20,000 columella beads laid out in the shape of a raptor. Fowler will publish his initial interpretation in 1969. Nearly 50 years later, Thomas Emerson and his colleagues will reanalyze the remains and find that the central pair is one male and one female, with several other women and at least one child buried alongside them. Both readings agree on one thing: the burial is not an accident. Someone at Cahokia around the year 1050 organized this arrangement carefully. American settlers had lived on top of these fields for 232 years. None of them had seen it. On that July morning, a white archaeologist from Chicago, without any indigenous ancestry to claim, applies the same method Warren Whitry had applied 6 years earlier to a circle of post holes half a kilometer to the west. He recognizes magnitude. The thread lifts against the ideology of a whole century, scientifically. Cahokia was the largest city built in North America before 1800. It had 20,000 people at its height. It had an observatory of red cedar, a leveled central plaza of 20 hectares, 4 cardinal neighborhoods, a network of specialized artisan workshops, and trade routes reaching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes to the Rocky Mountains. It was more populous than London in the same century. It emptied slowly over 80 years and was fully abandoned around 1350. Then for 611 years, it was not seen. Not seen. This is precise language. It was not hidden, it was not buried, it was not forgotten in the way that some ancient sites are forgotten, swallowed by jungle, lost under sand, mislocated on old maps. The mound was one of the largest earthen structures on the continent. The plaza was still flat. A house sat on the top terrace from the 1860s to the 1940s. Colonists walked across the ground. They plowed around it. They planted wheat on it. They dug wells into it. They built farms across the residential districts. They named the Great Mound after monks who had lived on it for 4 years without knowing where they were. The reason none of them saw it is that they had a framework that said there was nothing to see. The lost race theory was not an accident of ignorance. It was ideological work. It said the mounds had been built by a race of vanished ancient inhabitants distinct from the Native Americans of the continent. It made the removal of native peoples from their ancestral lands during the 1830s, 40s, 50s, and beyond legally and morally cleaner. The Cahokia in front of the colonists could not be seen as a city, because seeing it as a city would have granted authorship to the wrong people. Cyrus Thomas refuted the theory in 1894. He did it as a scientist, with 2,000 excavated sites in 23 states as evidence. It ended the theory in universities. It took 73 more years until Melvin Fowler, at the edge of the trench of Mound 72 in July of 1967, for the scale of the city to be recognized, not discovered, recognized. The bones and the beads and the 20 hectares had never left. What changed was the framework. What changed was the seeing. This is what the long thread means when we say the thread is carried. It is not always carried by descendants. Sometimes it is carried by scientists who are not descended from the civilization they recover, who have no ethnic claim to make, no personal wound to heal. Fowler was a white American archaeologist from Chicago. He had no native ancestry. He was not carrying anyone's family memory. His method was rigorous, and he applied it for 30 years. His documentation was so careful that when Emerson and colleagues reanalyzed the mound, 72 bones, 50 years later, they could correct him without erasing him. The thread of Cahokia was carried by a method. Method is not neutral. Method applied against an ideology that says there is nothing to see is itself an act. On the morning of the autumn equinox in September of 2026, the sun will rise through the reconstructed Woodhenge, 3 at Cahokia Mounds. A small group of visitors will be watching. Some of them will be Osage. Some will be Ho-Chunk. They cannot claim direct genealogical descent from the builders. The archaeology does not establish that, but they are there. They watch the light cross the beaten earth. The shadow of the central post moves toward the Great Mound 800 meters east. The alignment holds. The thread is still being carried. In the winter of 1916, an American Egyptologist at Harvard named George Reisner descended by rope into the underground chamber of a pyramid at Meroe, in what is now Sudan. Lamp in one hand, notebook in the other, he was standing in the middle of the largest pyramid field on Earth, more than twice as many pyramids as there are in all of Egypt combined. They had been built by the kingdom of Kush, which had ruled Egypt itself for a century as the 25th dynasty, and then retreated south to reign for 1,000 years more. Reisner recognized the scale. He did not recognize the makers. He wrote that Kush must have been built by white Egyptian invaders, the same ideological reflex that American colonists had applied to Cahokia. It would take decades of later work, most of it by an Egyptologist named Timothy Kendall, to correct the misattribution without erasing Reisner's documentation. Cavin in the Andes, Cahokia in the bottom, Kush at the Fifth Cataract, 3 continents, 3 ways of carrying the thread, each imperfect, each essential, each carrying the same fact against the same erasure. Subscribe. The next civilization